I'm 58 years old, and for 40 of those years, the deep North Atlantic has been my office. But the ocean always keeps one last secret, one that makes you wish you'd retired a season sooner. We weren't looking for the Titan. The world had already written its obituary, so when its mangled frame appeared on our sonar, miles from the official debris field, the first question wasn't how, but why here? When the Coast Guard finally patched through to our sat phone and saw the live feed from our ROV, there was just dead silence. Then, a voice I didn't recognize asked, "Captain, what else is down there with it?" That's when I knew we were in real trouble. Would you have dared to look closer? Let me know in the comments if you would have investigated. And don't forget to subscribe and tell me what city or country you're watching from. You'll want to see what we found. My name is Elias Vance. Most folks just call me Eli. I'm 58 years old, and the lines on my face were carved by 40 years of North Atlantic salt and wind. My ship, the Nautilus, is more home to me than any patch of dry land ever was. She's not the newest or the fastest research vessel out of Woods Hole, but she's steady, and her hull hums a tune I've come to know better than my own heartbeat. Out here, routine is your friend. It's your anchor in a world that has no floor. You wake up at 0400, you drink coffee that tastes like burnt metal, and you watch the world through a series of screens that paint a picture of a place you'll never touch. For the past week, that picture had been the abyssal plain southeast of Newfoundland. Our contract was simple, if mind-numbingly dull: survey a proposed route for a new fiber optic cable. My job was to steer the Nautilus along a perfectly straight, predetermined line, while our multi-beam echo sounder mapped every contour of the seabed, 12,000 feet below. It's like mowing an impossibly large, dark lawn you can't even see. The day it all changed started just like any other. The air in the survey room was thick, with the smell of ozone from the equipment, and the faint, sweet scent of the powdered creamer Thomas Miller, my lead sonar tech, insisted on using. Thomas was a good kid, sharp as a tack, but he hadn't yet learned the profound, soul-deep boredom that comes from staring at cascading green data for 8 hours a day. He still found it exciting. I was on the bridge, watching the gray, rolling expanse of the Atlantic, a cup of that terrible coffee in my hand, when the intercom crackled. "Skipper, you might want to see this." There was no urgency in his voice, just a note of curiosity. That's always how it starts, not with a bang, but with a question mark. I made my way down to the survey room. The screens glowed in the dark, casting long shadows. Thomas was leaning forward, his brow furrowed, pointing at a small section of the bathymetric map scrolling by. "Right there," he said. "See it?" I saw it. Amidst the gentle, rolling topography of the abyssal silt, there was a cluster of hard returns. The computer rendered them as sharp, angry peaks of red and yellow against the cool blue and green of the seafloor. Nature, especially at this depth, tends to work in curves, in soft, eroded shapes. This was different. It was angular, jagged. It was the kind of signature you get from man-made objects, a shipwreck. "Probably an old cargo container that fell off a freighter," I said, more to myself than to him. "It happens. The ocean is the world's biggest junkyard." "Stick to the survey line, son. The client's paying for a straight line, not a scavenger hunt." But as I said it, my eyes stayed glued to the screen. The anomaly was about 2 miles south of our current track. Thomas zoomed in. The resolution wasn't great from this distance, but the shape was undeniably wrong. It wasn't a rectangular container. It was a chaotic mess, a debris field. My contract, a thick binder of legal jargon sitting in my cabin, was explicit. Ignore all non-essential deviations. Every hour we spent off route was thousands of dollars in fuel and operational costs that came out of my pocket. It was a simple business decision, but my gut felt like I'd swallowed a block of ice. 40 years at sea teaches you to listen to the whispers that don't come through the radio. It's a feeling in the pit of your stomach, a change in the pressure of the air, a sense that the ocean is holding its breath. I thought of Daniel Foster, a diver I lost on a salvage job off the coast of Ireland 20 years ago. The equipment said it was safe. The charts said it was clear, but my gut screamed at me not to send him down. I listened to the machines instead. I've carried that mistake with me every day since. I looked at Thomas, then back at the screen. The red and yellow pixels seemed to pulse in the dark. "Bring us about, Mr. Miller," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "Take us off the survey line. I want a high-resolution pass directly over that target." The quiet professionalism in the room shifted. The low hum of boredom was replaced by the electric crackle of the unknown. Crewmen started moving, with a purpose they hadn't had all week. They trusted me. They trusted the gut feeling. It took us 30 minutes to move the Nautilus into position. The whole time, I felt the client's accountant staring at me over my shoulder. But the closer we got, the clearer the picture became. This was no shipping container. It was a significant debris field, and in the middle of it, a larger, dense object. It was twisted, mangled. "It's small, whatever it is," said Peter Harris, our ROV pilot, who had joined us in the survey room. "Maybe 15-20 feet long." The size was what made it so strange. Too small to be a freighter. Too modern-looking in its material signature to be an old wreck. My heart started to beat a little faster. There was only one way to know for sure. "Peter," I said, "wake up your team. We're deploying the Orion." A murmur went through the room. Deploying our remotely operated vehicle was no small task. It meant stopping the ship completely, a full crew on deck in the biting Atlantic wind, a delicate, hours-long operation to lower a 2-ton robot on a tether 3 miles long into the crushing blackness. It was a call that meant I was officially abandoning the contract schedule and betting my reputation on a gut feeling. But I had to know. I had to see what was down there. The silence in my own head was deafening. I had a feeling, a cold, creeping certainty, that we were about to knock on a door that we should have left closed. Would you have turned back, or would you have risked it all to look closer? Let me know in the comments if you would have made the call to dive. And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe, and tell me what part of the world you're watching from. Because what the Orion's cameras were about to show us, it changed everything. The descent of the Orion is a lesson in patience. It takes over 2 hours for the ROV to fall through 12,500 feet of water. For 2 hours, the 7 of us in the control room, myself, Peter, Thomas, and the rest of the tech crew, are silent passengers on a journey to another world. The only sound is the hum of the servers and the gentle whir of the fiber-optic tether spooling out from the ship's stern. On the main screen, the camera shows nothing but the endless, hypnotic blizzard of marine snow. It's the constant rain of organic debris from the world of light to the world of darkness, the dust of life settling on the bones of the planet. It's beautiful, in a way, but after an hour it feels like you're falling through eternity. The only thing that proves you're moving is the depth gauge in the corner of the screen, its numbers relentlessly climbing, each foot representing another pound of crushing pressure. 10,000 feet. The weight of a small car on every square inch of the Orion's titanium frame. 11,000. 12. Down here, the water itself is a solid. It's a physical presence that wants to erase anything that doesn't belong. Peter had his hands on the joystick, but there was nothing for him to do but keep the ROV stable. His eyes were glued to the forward-looking sonar, a secondary screen that painted the world ahead in ghostly acoustic shadows. It was still showing nothing but the flat, featureless mud of the abyssal plain. "Coming up on the target area, Skipper," he said, his voice flat, professional. "Altitude is 100 feet off the bottom. I'm turning on the main floods." He flicked a switch. On the main screen, the world outside the camera lens exploded with light. A cone of brilliant white cut through the black, illuminating the marine snow like a snowstorm in a car's headlights. The beam shot down, hitting the sea floor below. It was just as the multi-beam sonar had shown us, a vast, empty expanse of pale gray silt, soft as powdered sugar, molded by currents we couldn't feel into gentle, sweeping dunes. It was a desert, a silent, cold, dead desert. "Bringing her down," Peter said. He nudged the controls, and the Orion began its final, slow descent. 50 feet. 30. 10. The ROV's thrusters kicked up soft clouds of silt that billowed and swirled like smoke from a dying fire. We began our search pattern, a slow, methodical grid that Peter executed with the precision of a surgeon. For 20 minutes, we saw nothing but mud. The initial excitement in the room had long since evaporated, replaced by the familiar, low-grade tension of a search. You start to doubt yourself. You start to think about the fuel costs, the lost time, the angry email from the client that's waiting for you. Maybe my gut was wrong this time. Maybe it was just a strange rock formation the sonar had misinterpreted. I was about to tell Peter to widen the search grid when Thomas, staring at the sonar display, said, "Wait! Hard contact. 30 meters, 10 degrees to port." Peter didn't hesitate. He gently nudged the joystick, and the Orion pivoted. The floodlights swept across the empty seabed. And then they hit something. It was white. Stark. Unnaturally white against the endless gray. "What in God's name is that?" someone whispered behind me. Peter pushed the thrusters, and we moved closer. The white shape grew larger, resolving itself out of the gloom. It was smooth. Manufactured. It was the unmistakable, pill-shaped form of a carbon fiber hull. My blood ran cold. It was the Titan. But something was terribly wrong. The world had been told a simple, clean story. The submersible had suffered a catastrophic implosion. The pressure had crushed it into 1,000 pieces in less than a millisecond. But that's not what we were seeing. The hull was there, largely intact, but it was violated. There was a massive, gaping tear along its side. The carbon fibers peeled back like string cheese. It wasn't the neat, inward collapse of an implosion. It looked like it had been ripped open by a can opener. "Peter," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Take us around it. Slow." He guided the Orion in a careful, deliberate circle. The view was sickening. The sub wasn't just resting on the seafloor. It was pinned. It was snagged, caught on something else. Something much, much larger. The ROV's lights struggled to penetrate the darkness beyond the mangled white hull. But I could see it. A vast, dark mass that seemed to drink the light. It wasn't rock. It was metal. Old, rusted, angular metal, covered in a century of marine growth. The Titan looked like a toy, a minnow impaled on the teeth of some ancient fossilized leviathan. "My God, Eli," Peter said, his voice strained. "It's tangled. It's caught on its dive plane." I could see it now. A long, sharp fin of rusted steel protruded from the dark mass, and the Titan was wedged right onto it. The puncture in the hull matched the shape of that dive plane perfectly. This wasn't a pressure failure. It was a collision. This tiny vessel, on its voyage to see one famous wreck, had stumbled blindly into the arms of another. A ghost that wasn't on any chart. I looked at the faces of my crew, illuminated by the ghostly glow of the screens. The curiosity that had driven us here was gone, replaced by a cold, primal dread. The kind of fear that comes from seeing something that simply should not be. This place felt wrong. It felt like a tomb we had desecrated. We had the equipment. Our winches could pull a locomotive out of a canyon. But looking at that unholy marriage of modern folly and ancient iron, locked in a silent embrace in the crushing dark, you have to ask yourself, would you have the courage to pull on that thread? Would you dare to see what else comes up with it? I knew I couldn't make that call alone. I reached for the satellite phone, my hand trembling just slightly. I had to report this. I had to tell someone what we'd found. If you want to know who answered that call, and what they ordered me to do next, you should make sure you're subscribed. Because the voice on the other end of that line wasn't the Coast Guard. The voice on the other end of the sat phone was exactly what you'd expect from the Coast Guard. Calm, professional, a little bored. I gave him our coordinates, our vessel name, and a clipped professional summary of the situation. USCGC. This is R/V Nautilus. We are off our survey route at the following coordinates. We have located what we believe to be the wreckage of the Titan submersible. There was a pause. I could hear the rustle of papers, the distant click of a keyboard. R/V Nautilus. Say again? You've located the Titan? I confirmed, and the boredom in his voice vanished. He asked if we had visual confirmation. I told him we had a live feed from our ROV. He asked me to hold. The minutes that followed stretched into an eternity. In the control room, no one spoke. The 7 of us just stared at the main screen, at the silent, impossible tableau 12,000 feet below us. The mangled white submersible, impaled on the dark, monstrous shape lurking behind it. It felt like we were watching something indecent, a private moment of death we had no right to see. The sat phone crackled again, but the voice was different. It was deeper, with no regional accent. It was the kind of voice that was accustomed to being obeyed without question. Captain Vance, this is Commander Thorne, United States Navy, Submarine Development Group 1. I understand you have a visual on a deep-sea anomaly. Can you confirm you have a live uplink-capable video feed? I told him we did. Patch it through to this channel. Now. There was no please, no request. It was an order. Thomas worked his keyboard, his fingers flying across the keys. A new string of data appeared in the corner of our screen, encrypted uplink established. We have your feed, Captain, the voice said. Hold your position. Do not move the ROV. For a full minute, there was only the sound of our ship's systems humming, and the faint static from the phone I held pressed to my ear. I could imagine a room somewhere, probably in Norfolk or San Diego, filled with men in uniform, staring at the same image we were. I could feel their eyes on us, through the camera, through miles of water and wire. All right, Captain, Thorne's voice returned, tighter now. Let's see what you've really found. I want your pilot to pivot the vehicle 90 degrees to port. Do it slowly. I want to see the larger object. Peter looked at me, his eyebrows raised. I gave him a slight nod. With movements so gentle they were almost imperceptible, he nudged the joystick. The Orion S thrusters whispered, and the camera began to pan. The floodlights slid off the white carbon fiber of the Titan and crawled onto the thing that had killed it. It was a wall of black steel. Not the gentle curve of a modern hull, but a slab of flat, angular plates, welded together in a way that screamed military. It was covered in a thick carpet of marine growth, but underneath, I could see the unmistakable signs of a pressure hull. Continue the pan, Thorne commanded. Move up. I want to see the superstructure, Peter complied. The lights climbed higher, revealing a long, raised structure running along the top. The sail. The conning tower. My breath caught in my throat. We were looking at a submarine. An old one. The design was brutal, functional, a Cold War relic. It was a Predator, built for a war that was never fought. And it was resting here, in a graveyard it had created for itself. Hold it there, Thorne said sharply. On the sail. Do you see that discoloration about halfway up? I saw it. A patch where the marine growth was thinner, a faint shape underneath. Your ROV has exterior lights, Captain. Can you focus them into a tighter beam? Peter adjusted the floods, concentrating their power into a single, piercing spotlight. The beam cut through the gloom, blasting the side of the conning tower. Now zoom in. As tight as you can get. The camera lens magnified the image, pushing past the grime of 40 years in the abyss. And then we saw it. Faded, eaten away by salt and time, but still there. Unmistakable. A 5-pointed star, painted in a ghostly, dying shade of red. A collective gasp went through the control room. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated shock. On the phone, I heard Commander Thorne exhale slowly. "Sweet Mother of God," he whispered, all military composure gone, replaced by the awe of a historian finding a lost city. "It's the K-279, the Red October they never found." He didn't have to explain. Every professional mariner, especially those of my generation who grew up with the Cold War, knew the ghost stories. The K-279 was a Soviet November-class nuclear attack submarine that had vanished without a trace in 1982. The official story, the one fed to the world, was that it suffered a reactor casualty in the Barents Sea, north of Russia, and sank with all 98 hands. But there were always rumors. Whispers of a defection, of a secret mission gone wrong, and here it was, thousands of miles from where it was supposed to be, sitting silently in the North Atlantic shipping lanes. "Captain?" Thorne's voice was back, cold as the abyss itself. "I want a close-up of the contact point, where the submersible is connected to the submarine's dive plane." Peter maneuvered the Orion back around. We could all see it now. The jagged, rusted edge of the sub's forward hydroplane had sliced into the Titan's hull. It wasn't an implosion. It was a traffic accident at the bottom of the world. The Titan, flying blind through the dark, had slammed directly into a ghost. The pressure differential did the rest, ripping the hull open along the gash. It was a 1 in a billion chance, a modern tragedy colliding with a forgotten secret. The questions were overwhelming. How did it get here? Why was it sinking covered up? And what was a Soviet nuclear submarine doing this close to the American coastline? Looking at that red star, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the deep ocean. We hadn't just found a shipwreck. We had found a secret that powerful people had gone to great lengths to bury. Would you have the courage to pull on a thread like that, knowing what might be attached to it? If you want to hear more stories from the deep, make sure you subscribe, because what Commander Thorne ordered me to do next is a secret I was never supposed to tell. Commander Thorne's voice on the sat phone was no longer filled with the awe of a historian. It had been replaced by something else, something cold and hard as the hull of the submarine below us. "Captain Vance," he said, and the connection was so clear it was like he was standing right behind me. "Your discovery is now a matter of national security. You and your crew are to consider yourselves under a direct order from the United States Navy. You will speak of this to no one. You will not log it. You will not record it. Do you understand me?" I looked at the 6 other faces in the control room, their expressions a mixture of shock and fear. I understood perfectly. We hadn't found a shipwreck. We had stumbled into a cage and the door had just slammed shut. The next 24 hours were the longest of my life. The sat phone became a leash. Thorne, or someone from his office, was a constant presence, a disembodied voice that dictated our every move. We were ordered to keep the Orion 2's camera fixed on the wreckage, but we were forbidden from exploring further. We just sat there, adrift in the North Atlantic, silent witnesses to a secret we were never meant to see, while somewhere, gears of power we couldn't comprehend began to turn. My crew, a good bunch of professionals, became ghosts on their own ship. The easy camaraderie was gone, replaced by clipped sentences and downcast eyes. They knew what this meant. We had flown too close to a sun we didn't even know existed, and our wings were melting. By dawn, a new contact appeared on our radar, approaching fast from the southeast. It wasn't broadcasting any identification signals. It was a gray, featureless smudge on the horizon that grew into the unmistakable silhouette of a Navy destroyer. It didn't hail us. It didn't need to. It just took up a station 1,000 yards off our port bow, a silent, steel wolf watching the sheep. The order came through an encrypted text message to our ship's computer. Retrieve your vehicle. Erase all data pertaining to the anomaly. Await further instruction. Thomas looked at me, his face pale. Skipper, they want me to wipe the drives. All of it. The sonar logs, the video files, everything. I could see the conflict in his eyes. It was his work, his discovery. But looking out the porthole at the warship sitting there, its cannons looking like long, dark fingers pointed in our direction, there was no choice. I nodded. He typed a series of commands, and I watched as terabytes of the most significant discovery of my entire career simply vanished. It was a digital execution. The proof that the world had been told a lie was gone in a puff of electrons. Later that afternoon, a helicopter was dispatched from the destroyer. 2 men in dark, sterile-looking jumpsuits, carrying a heavy briefcase, were lowered onto our deck. They didn't introduce themselves. They just opened the case and produced a thick document, bristling with subclauses and intimidating legal jargon. A national security non-disclosure agreement. It bound me, and every member of my crew, to silence for the rest of our natural lives, under penalty of treason. As I signed my name, I felt the weight of that secret settle onto my soul, a pressure far greater than any ocean depth. We were ordered to leave the area immediately, to resume our original survey route as if nothing had happened. As the Nautilus turned, I watched the destroyer stay behind, a silent guardian over its sunken Cold War ghost. The official story never changed. The Titan was a tragedy of hubris and engineering failure, a cautionary tale about the unforgiving physics of the deep. The K-279, the Red October that was never supposed to be there, remains, officially, a footnote in Soviet naval history, lost in the icy waters of the Barents Sea. They told the world a simple story because the truth was too complicated, too messy. The truth is that a vessel of modern arrogance, on a tourist trip to see a famous grave, stumbled blindly into a secret tomb that a superpower had buried half a century ago. They didn't just implode, they were silenced by a ghost. Now every time I stand on the bridge and look out at that endless gray water, I don't see the romance of the sea anymore. I see a blanket, a heavy dark blanket they use to cover up the things they don't want us to find. And you, what do you think was really behind it all? A simple cover-up, or something more? They can erase my logs, but they can't erase my memory, and they can't stop this conversation. Let me know what you believe in the comments below, and subscribe if you think some secrets shouldn't stay buried in the deep dark forever.